So video games need to remember stuff that has happened, right? So in this little level that I have here, which is a tutorial area, you're supposed to just kill this one enemy, and then the floor behind us here will open up and let the player through so that they can move on through the rest of the game. But what if we come back afterwards into this level and it's been unloaded and then we reload it in? The game will reload everything in its default state, as I will show you in a moment. We're now going into a different level. Now this one is loaded and the previous one has unloaded. So if we go back in, it should have the floor being reset down to being low. Also, there's an object there that has still got collision. Probably should look into that. Anyway, if we look around this corner here, we can see the floor is still up. How does that work? Well, that's because I've implemented a simple event flag system in which I can make events and say, okay, after I've done X, Y, or Z, tag this as being done. And then when the level reloads, what I'm doing is I'm checking that event and seeing has this happened or not, and then setting certain things to happen based off of that. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. So we're here in a empty project. I'm going to be making a simple event flag system like I have in my own game. If you want the project files for this project, they're down below in the description to download for YouTube members and Patreons as always. Let's immediately just jump into this because this is actually not too difficult at all. What we're going to be doing first is we're going to be making a blueprint class and we'll make a new game instance. You can also do this in the game mode if you wanted to. Or hell, even on like that player controller, anywhere you want, really. I like the game instance because it is persistent throughout the entire play session. So if you unload and reload a level, you don't need to worry about transferring that data. It's just still going to be there until you close out the game and reopen it again, at which point you will need to save and load that in a save data object, which we'll talk about in a minute as well, because there's a little bit of trickery to do with that. So let's make a game instance, and I will call this one BP event flag game instance. If you already have a custom game instance for your project, you can just put it in there, or again, you can put it anywhere you want. If you are going along with me though, and you're putting it in your game instance, what you want to do is going to your project settings and look for the instance. Game instance class should be set to the normal game instance or nothing. We're going to set this to our custom one with BP event game instance. Before we actually do anything with this game instance though, we're going to need to make something that can hold these event flags. So we'll make another blueprint class, and in this blueprint class we're going to be making a data asset. We'll make a primary data asset and we'll call this one blueprint event flag class. Opening that up, this blueprint is going to be the, well, blueprint is going to be the template for what these data assets are going to look like. So you can put some simple functions and events in here if you wanted to, and all we're going to do, honestly, is we're just going to make a variable and say event has happened. That's all we're going to be doing in here. So we just make a data asset to hold one bool. And once we've done that, what we can do is going up here into the miscellaneous tab, we can make a data asset. And we can make that based off of the templates that we have just created. So we can now make a data asset for player defeated boss 1. Or maybe we can make a data asset for has finished tutorial. Or we can make a data asset for has found Easter egg. You can make data assets to flag whatever you want. That said, these are really supposed to be for events. So things like the examples that you see here, defeating a boss, finishing the tutorial, an Easter egg, doing certain events. You probably don't want to make a data asset flag for every enemy that you've defeated to remember whether or not you have defeated certain enemies and whether or not you want to respawn them or not. There's much better ways to do that don't involve making individual data assets for literally every enemy in your game. We're not going to be talking about that today, but I just wanted to put that out there. If that's what you're planning to use this for, you probably shouldn't. Okay, if we open up one of these data assets, we can see it just has the bool here. Event has happened, yes or no. And we can manually set these in the editor if you want to, which is very, very nice for test purposes as well. But we're going to be making a couple of functions in our game instance here to do that for us. So let's open up our game instance, and We're going to make a function for setting the value, and we're going to be making a function for getting the value. The function that we're going to be making first is for setting the value, and that one you can also do through an event. Effectively, it's the same event or function. I like to make functions because it's less cluttered. They just are all simply listed over here. So we're going to do that. If you prefer making it a custom event in your normal event graph for whatever reason, you can do that for this first one. So let's make this a set event has happened. And then we're also going to be making a get event has happened. This one, the getting for the event has happened, does need to be a function. You can't make this with a custom event. And that is because this is going to need to return a value. And events can't return values, functions can. And then one last thing that we're going to have to make here is in our variables tab, we're going to be making a variable for the events array. This is going to hold an array of all of the events in our game that we're going to potentially need to read and write. So this won't be a bool. Instead, what we're going to do here is we'll make this event flags class, which is just the class that we just made. And we're going to be making an object reference to it. So now you can see we have this events array, and we can pick out of all of the data asset events that we've just made. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into an array so that we obviously can add multiple of these events. And every time you make a new data asset to hold an event flag, you're going to come into this class over here, into your game instance, and add it to this array. So we want to add our defeated boss 1, has finished tutorial, and has found Easter egg. And then I made one too many for now, so let's delete the last one. It's a little bit tedious that you have to do that every single time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's going to really help you. Now, let's get to actually programming this thing, because that's what we're here for. And first we're going to program the set event has happened. And for that we're going to start with getting a reference to our event array, and we're going to try to find an item out of that array. And you will see that finding an item provides us with a little drop-down menu where we can find any of these items that exist within this array. So we'll hook that up into the parameters, the inputs for our function. Then we'll also on the right hand side here add a second input, and that will just be a bool input, and we'll call this one has happened. After we have found the item that we're looking for, we don't actually get a reference to that item, we simply get the output index. So the way we then get that is by using the get node for getting a copy and just using that index to actually get the item out of the array. Now that we have the item, we can set event has happened, the bool that we've added to that data asset. So we can just simply set that to our whatever we input into this function. And now there's a little thing that we need to be aware of, and that is this getting node is getting us a copy, not a reference. So what it's doing is it's looking at that array and saying, okay, in this index number, we have this entry into the array. We're going to be making a copy of that. So any changes we make to this won't actually affect the array itself immediately. We need to manually say, hey, okay, we're going to overwrite the previous entry with the new one that has made changes to, which is relatively easy. We're just going to drag off the event array and we're going to set the array element. And here we'll set the array element to the same index from the one that we were getting from before. And the item itself is going to be the item that we got. And this is simply just replacing the original version of this asset with whatever changes we've made to it. And it's honestly as easy as that. So now if we go back into the event graph and we say set event has happened, we get this node which does not yet have a drop-down menu. And you might be thinking, wasn't that the entire point? And you would be right. So let's real quick go back into this function, select the input node here, and if we go into item to find, you will note that by default it is set to pass by reference. If we disable that and compile, you can now see that we do have the drop-down menu. So we can simply say we want to set the event has happened value for defeated boss 1 to true, and that's simply how we can do that with this node now. Very nice. Now we can set this value. We also want to be able to get the value. So let's open up the function that we've made for that, because this one is actually a little bit simpler as well. We're going to do something similar. We're starting here with the event array. Let's get that, and we'll find an item, hook that up as a parameter. This time we'll just immediately go in and disable parse by reference, just so that we know that we've done that. We'll use a get a copy node, and we'll get a copy of the same index as the item that we're trying to find. And then we will use that to get has happened. And then we'll simply put that into a return node as the output. And this is the reason that this needed to be a function, because a return node can only exist within a function, not relative to a event. So we'll just hook that up, and that is kind of everything there is to that. So if we go into the event graph now, we can also say get event has happened, and it is a node in which we can just say, hey, we want to see has this happened or not, and then we get this output pin from that function. There's one little thing though about this still, and that is you might notice that there's no actual like stuff that's being executed here. There's no changing to any information. We're simply with the execution pins going straight from do this function to return this function. And whenever we do that, we're only reading information. What we can actually do is we can change in the details here to a pure function. So if we do that and we compile, you can see it turns into one of these little green nodes without the execution pins. So this is a function that will just simply take something in, like look up information about it, maybe do a little bit of calculation with it, and then spit out something else. It doesn't actually change any information or execute any sort of code. And now we have a very simple system in which we can set these events and get these events, and we can do whatever we want with them. So if we were to open up, for instance, here our level blueprint, because that's usually where we're going to be scripting out these kind of things. So we would start off by simply casting to our BP event flag game instance, or again, whatever game instance that you might be using. And we can simply get a reference to our game instance very easily anywhere in our game, in our level blueprints, in any of our actor blueprints. This is a very easy thing to access. And from there, we can probably promote this to a variable first and foremost. And once it's been promoted to a variable, what we can do is we can use that variable to get the event has happened. And we can also use it to set event has happened. And this gives us very easily accessible nodes with these drop-down menus to change or read from whether or not an event has happened yet. Now, I mentioned something about save data early on, and that is because we are using data assets, and data assets are a little bit iffy to really understand. You can go watch my video specifically on data assets for a little bit more information on it, but data assets are persistent throughout a play session. So if I move into a different level, those data assets are still going to have the same values. And if you're playing like in the Unreal Editor, if you're testing something, you change the value of the data asset, stop playing and start playing again, those changes are still going to be the same. So do be aware that through testing, you need to manually reset those values every single time. It's probably easiest to like make a function to do something. But the other side of that is that you can't directly save into a save game object a data asset. What you need to do is you need to get the variables out of it and put those into the save data object instead. So I'll show you real quick how to do that. We can make a blueprint class, which will be a save game. I'm assuming that you have a basic knowledge of how save games work. If you don't, I'll probably make a tutorial about that soon, because I don't think I have in the past yet. In the save game though, instead of making a variable array for the event data assets, like you probably imagine you would, we're just going to make an array, we'll call it events, of simply bools. If your event flags in your data asset have more than just one variable, you'll want to make a struct to go with all that, and then save those structs in an array. Again, if you want to know more about structs, I do have a specific video all about how those work in Unreal as well. Let's go real quick into my game instance here, just to make a quick mock-up version of a custom event for save game. We'll create a save game object of our BP saves class, and then we will get our events array, and we'll also get our actual events array from this. So it's a little bit confusing if you're just listening. I recommend you look at the screen for right now. The save game object has a array called events which hold bools, and then our game instance has a events array which actually holds the data assets. We're going to be using the events array with the data assets to make a for each loop, and those are going to, with every single array element, we're going to get event has happened, and we're going to use that to set the corresponding value in our bool array here. So we'll use the set array element node like we have before. The item value is going to be whatever our corresponding data asset is. The index will be our array index from our for each loop, and we want to enable size to fit to make sure that the events array with the bools in it is the same length as our events array with the data assets. And then we just connect that up the loop body. Of course, this is for saving games. For loading games, you can simply turn this around. You can use the events for each loop, and we can use set event has happened, and there we can simply say use the events array again. We want to get item to find, and then the has happened will be the same as whatever our input from our array is from our save game. So that's kind of how that works. It's a very brief overview. If you are not familiar with save games, this probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this is not a save game tutorial. There's just a little caveat at the end of the video that if you're going to be using this system, and I really do like this system, this is something to be aware of that you should be doing. Now, if you want this project, I'll keep this not functioning event in the code as well, if you want to look around with that a little bit. There will be a link down below in the description, as always, to the Patreon page and a link for YouTube members to download the project files and just play around with them a little bit to maybe understand things a little bit better. Hopefully this has been helpful for everybody though, and I will be back next time with more cool stuff. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page. And a special thanks to my Cave Digger tier Patreons, Sir J. Thomas,